work with someone that can help you, not necessarily as one-to-one or with a coach, but have someone to support you, even if it's a co-host. Don't do it just yourself. Again, it's such a broad question, it's impossible to get every single new podcaster, but yeah, that was what came to my mind.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
What's up, podcaster? It is Adam A. Adams. Today's episode, we've got somebody way over the pond who originally comes from Greece, and now he's right outside of London in the oldest founding city in England, apparently. So I'm learning as we go. And his podcast is called Personal Development Mastery. So personal development mastery is for you if you want to grow yourself as a person. A lot of his clients that he works with end up living fairly close to where he is, although half of his listeners are from the US, and a good portion of our listeners are from the US as well. So you might want to check that out, Personal Development Mastery. And the link is already in the show notes. And also his bio is also in the show notes. So if you want to get to know him and his company, that's where you'll find it. Today, this episode is brought to you in part by Decks. So Decks, if you haven't heard of it, is a bunch of random questions. So it's a deck of cards. Looks a lot like a regular deck of playing cards. If you were going to play poker or solitaire or blackjack or whatever else you play with playing cards, instead of having 52 cards, there are 50, and they're all different questions. And so Agi and I are going to play this game. Are you ready, Agi?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm looking forward.
Are you scared? Are you scared? Are you nervous?
Scared is not the right word. Excited, nervousness mixed with excitement. So yes, I'll give it my best shot.
Let's go with 3 questions today to start this off. Agi, what was the best present that you ever received?
As a podcaster, you mean, or generally in my life?
Generally in your life. Let's
right.
get to know you deeply.
Sure. Okay. The confusion was because for a moment I thought there were questions about podcasting, and I thought, oh my God, okay, the best present I received in my life. Oh my. I feel like a complete blank. I have a complete blank on this, Adam.
Well,
can
I come back to it?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Question number 2. Would you travel to space if possible?
Yes, I would. I like this question more. It does not rely on my memory. Yes, I would certainly would if I could, and if I can explain why as well. I think that the perspective that you would get looking at our planet from way above would be so mind-blowing that it would really shift your probably your whole paradigm of what life is and how things are. You know, it must be amazing, and that's probably not a strong word to describe that. So yeah, I would certainly do it if I could.
Awesome. Question number 3 and final question. Who is the best female role model in your life?
The one person that came to my mind now, and it's more of a recent one, is Mel Robbins, who I follow her, work and some posts and what she does. Interestingly enough, and I will add to that, in the personal development space, the female role models are much less than, it predominantly dominated by men. I mean, the teachers, I would say, of personal development. So, again, I know you told me the questions are general, but, that came to mind as a person that I respect and admire very much, Mel Robbins.
Awesome. Agi, would you rather, this isn't a question on here, would you rather me answer the best present I ever received, Or do you want to go ahead and take it still?
If you answer it, I think that would be more interesting for me for sure, because I still I'm going to come up with something right now. It's
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm
find
going
yours.
to share one that changed my life. My stepdad, who I grew up with, my mom and him got together when I was about 5 years old, and they got married a couple years later. He is a real estate investor and entrepreneur. He's got a couple different companies and lots of different property. One day, he had been telling me to read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad for a long time. Mm-hmm. And he always told me to save my money, to invest my money. And I never thought that I was there yet. I never thought I was ready or able to save money because I wasn't making very much. And so I kind of put it off. And then one day, it was either my birthday or Christmas or something. I don't remember when it was. I just remember in 2005, he gifted me a piece of property that he got off of a tax lien records. He wrote a letter to the owner and said, I'll buy your property for $100 of a quit claim deed. I'll give you $100 if all you do is quit claim deed that over to me, and then I'll pay the taxes, he said. So that year, he gifted this property to me. It's interesting because soon after, his accountant said that I had to pay for it. So I had to give the $100 that he paid. Mm-hmm. And I was in college, so it was very tough to spend that $100. That was a crazy amount of money for me at the time. And so first, this is probably the best gift because it was life-changing for me. A couple years later, I sold it for like $12,800 and a huge return, more money than I had ever seen. I was still in college, and that was like the amount of money that I was making in a whole year. And so I sold that property, and I finally, as a dyslexic, read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it put me on a trajectory that now today I have like 300 rentals, like over 300 rental units. And it started from that one gift. So it's kind of cool. I'd say that's probably the best gift anyone gave me, even if it only cost him $100 in a letter.
Listening to you sharing that story, and it was, thank you for sharing it. I'm glad that we shared yours rather than mine. It was much more, interesting. And of course, this is one of those, obviously, this has changed completely the trajectory of your life. So, wow, yes, indeed a great gift.
Awesome. Well, again, I'm here today with Agi Keramidas. And he is a podcaster. He has the podcast called Personal Development Mastery. And I want to try to get into his business, what he does, who he serves, and figure out why did he start a podcast. And then we can figure out if it's working, if his goal, if what he wanted to achieve, if he's seeing that come to fruition or not. So, Agi, let's start here. Can you explain why you decided to start that podcast?
Yes, of course. It was initially curiosity. I was at an event and I was intrigued. It was during a period of time in my life that I was going through many changes, personal development courses, things like that. So I was very much transforming from a closed and introvert person into someone who would really speak. I was doing some public speaking, things like that. So the podcast, when I found out about it, it intrigued me very much and instinctively felt like, that's something I should explore. So initially it was, curiosity. I like to call it joyous exploration of something new. And that very quickly I realized once I started doing it, how much I enjoyed it, how energized I would feel. I mean, I was buzzing the whole day after recording a podcast. So I thought there is something here for sure to explore further. So I carried on. That was my first podcast, which I used to have with a co-host. We were two friends talking about personal development. And then at some point in 2020, I started this podcast, my second podcast on my own, taking it to the direction that I really wanted. So it started as a curiosity, exploration of something new, and it transformed at some point to passion, really, because I would do it, and it takes a long amount of time, and I'm sure that the listener can really appreciate how long it takes. I'm at 236 episodes as we speak, so
congratulations.
Thank you. You too, as well, because your numbers are very close. I think we're just
about
a few
the same.
apart. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, and it needs commitment, it needs time, and I found that because I was so passionate about it, I would happily put the time, take it from other things, and put it there because I enjoyed it so much.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So, couple questions. Who's the avatar for your podcast? Is it the same avatar as who you serve in your business? And if not, could you describe that person?
Not entirely the same. I mean, there are some similarities, but I believe that the avatar, more the listener of the podcast, are more people maybe in the 30s, 40s or even a little bit more than that have an interest in improving, growing themselves, learning more about how to, and that could be in any area of their life, either starting a new business and wanting to explore the personal development side of it, which is the foundation. So people who are looking for change, for inspiring conversations, for actions, even more than conversations, something that is they can implement, to make an improvement in their life. So that's more like the listener, shall we say, approximately. So in terms of the person that you said that I serve more, I'm more focused in the coaching community, so it's more like those characteristics, of course, could still apply, but usually it's more people that are in the coaching space already, creating some work with impact, and they want to expand on it. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Another question. You mentioned that you originally started a podcast with a co-host.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you decided to start your podcast on your own.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, I'm curious if you recommend for the listener, if they haven't launched their show yet, would you recommend that they try to do it with this is A, B, and C. A,
Okay.
Would you recommend that they do it on their own instead and just to completely forego the co-host because they never work out? B, do you suggest that they go ahead and start with the co-host because it's easier to get started with a co-host and then start their own after? Or C, do you recommend that they start it with a co-host and stay with that co-host for their whole entire life?
Obviously, the C is you can't predict the future. You said that cohorts never work. I don't think that is entirely true. I mean,
so if it's not A, B, or C, you can make up your own letter. I went a little serious on those. D.
I know. I would certainly recommend starting with a co-host. For me, it really facilitated very much because I was completely new and I was very skeptical about how can I hold a conversation on my own in front of the microphone. So Paul, my friend and co-host, he had the gift of speaking, so he could speak much, much easier than me. I, on the other hand, would, hold the reins a bit, because if you let him speak, he can speak for hours, and I wanted to keep, so it was a great, a dynamic combination that really allowed me personally to be able more confidently to talk about these things, because I knew that at some point, if I can't think of what to say, he would jump in, and vice versa, of course. It was so co-hosting is a great way to start, and we did 85 episodes, so I think it worked quite well.
Cool. 5 episodes?
85.
And
yes.
So what happened to the old podcast, Agi?
We somehow stopped recording. Somehow it went more sparse, and keep on saying we should, but it's one of those things, it didn't have so much priority in either of us.
Okay. So is it still up?
It's still up, yeah. It's called Personal Development Essentials. It's still up.
Essentials.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. And so there's 85 episodes. You left it up. And were you getting frustrated that it was starting to die off and you knew that you still wanted to have a podcast? So you're like, I'm just going to do it on my own? Or was it more like you just kept thinking, I think I just want to have my own podcast? And then it eventually happened.
It's the second. It was not dying off at all. It was growing. It was just that as a co-host, it was quite, limited to what you talk with one person.
Yeah.
I really had started enjoying the interview aspect of it very much because I was doing the few interviews of that podcast, and I thought I want to do more.
Okay.
But that was a co-host podcast, so the interviews didn't fit in rightly. So that's why I created my own. So there was no frustration, just something that I wanted to go further on.
Okay. With your interviews, it sounds like that was important to you. So I assume with your 230 episodes, you're doing interviews, most of them?
Most of them, yes. Yes.
Okay. And how do you determine what questions to ask? For me, I just get a pod decks and then I'm like, I'll just ask those questions. No, that's not really what I do. But how do you come up with the questions? Because it sounds like for you, interviews were important. And so I suspect that the interview questions have a lot to do with the content that you want to provide. So if you could share with us like your thought process of coming up with the right questions to ask your guests.
Yes, it is a mixture of research and intuitively what I feel that is more, interesting, or it would interest the listener or inspire the listener and me, of course. So it's usually, the preparation starts when I have my guest fill in a form with some questions that give a guide of where, to take the interview. And then based on these topics and my own personal interest on the guest, I go to their website, I check out some of the previous works or podcasts or whatever it is. And from that, I formulate the questions. I always like to start with a bit of story, of background, so that the listener knows who that person is, or a little bit of it anyway, maybe what's relevant to the conversation. And then it's a matter of going to their expertise and going as deep as a limited amount of the podcast time allows, and explore one or two topics around that. So some of the questions I have written beforehand as part of my preparation. Many I don't even say them because during our conversation something else will come to my mind and we will go in another direction. But I do spend time to prepare the questions, and when I say time, depending on the person I interview, it might take days, because if I need to read their book, that's not something you can do in a couple of hours. So it's something because I respect the person that is opposite me and I want to know who they are. That's my style. So yeah, I hope that explains my process of questions.
Yeah, very well. I might have a couple of deeper questions on that, but I want to bring to light something that you said. You mentioned that it is important to have some background on your guest and to bring that to the listener. And you clarified, and I really appreciated it, that it was specifically the background that's relevant to the conversation. And this makes me think of a few podcasts that I listen to, that I have listened to. Obviously, I don't listen to them anymore because they would jump in and then they would start giving somebody's complete bio, how many kids they have. And a lot of those details frustrated me because I didn't see how it helped me with learning a certain thing. So what I'm saying is many podcasters make the mistake of giving background that's not relevant to today's conversation and spending a lot of time on it. It's one reason. I'm dyslexic, that's the other. But it's one reason why I don't read the guest bio, because I don't usually, guests are talking about where they graduated, what degrees they have, and how they got started. And a lot of this stuff is not relevant. So I just wanted to say I acknowledge that you make sure that the background is relevant, and I appreciate it. Now, I have like a 3-part-ish question, and I'm going to type it out for you as well, so you have something to look at.
Okay.
All right. How long is each episode? How many questions do you prepare in advance? Do you get to all of the questions that you've prepared?
Okay, cool. So the episode is about 45 minutes, give or take a little bit. How many questions I have? It depends. On the preparation, I have 6, 8, maybe 10. Let's say around 7, 8 questions, which are more topics. No, they're questions. They're not topics. They're questions. 7, 8 questions. And I also have some quick fire questions that I ask at the end, which is, a nice way to end the conversation or on a more sparkling note, maybe. So, and these are another 3 or 4, which, over time I have changed and tweaked. I don't always ask all of them. And your third question, if I get to all the questions, no, absolutely not. Sometimes, I have done preparation which was 2 pages because it was after a book. And we probably talk about 2 things out of, a list of 24 items. So it depends. Sometimes I go through all of them, but more often than not, no, because the conversation takes me elsewhere.
Yeah, I like that. I used to host some real estate conferences. I haven't done that ever since the pandemic. Not sure if I'll get back into it. And a lot of the times at our real estate conferences, we had what you call a panel discussion. It just means 3 or 4 people are all on stage, and I'll ask different people different questions. And one thing that I learned after many years of hosting panel discussions is that any one question generally takes somewhere close to 5 minutes. So what I figured out and learned was if we've got about 10 minutes left of the whole event, then everybody else would think that they can have about 10 questions. A novice would be like, okay, this is 10 questions because it's only going to take everybody a few seconds to answer each question. But me as an experienced host, at the time, I would say to myself, all right, we've got 10 minutes. And then I would tell the entire audience and the panelists, we have time for 2 questions. Once or twice, I think I remember 2 times, the panelists would argue and they'd be like, no, we've got 10 minutes. They would say that in front of everybody. And both times I would be able to respond, it's going to take about 5 minutes per question. And it always worked. It always happened. So that's one of the reasons why I asked, how long is each episode? You said 45 minutes. How many questions do you prepare? You said 8 or 10 per podcast, plus the rapid fires. And then I wanted to do the math, and it sounds like even the 8 to 10, you're not asking all of those questions because sometimes it goes into different directions and you need clarification. So I think that's helpful for a brand new podcaster to be able to kind of structure their podcast. 1 question's at least 5 minutes. If I'm going to have 8 questions, that's at least 40 minutes. If the only thing I do is just ask those 8. So, in fact,
can I add something to that? I think it's one thing I also do, and for someone who starts, is when you speak to someone over the maybe 1-2 questions, you start to gauge whether they tend to answer and take, like, say, 5 minutes, or some of them, and I'm sure you've seen it before, they're much more, concise in the speak. You would ask them something, and then after 1 minute, they would stop abruptly. And so you get that when you speak with someone like that. Obviously, you need to increase your questions if that's your guest.
Yeah. Like, for example, you remember when I told the story about my stepdad buying me that piece of land, and then I had paid it for $100?
Yeah.
The answer to that question could have been, oh, it was a cabin lot my dad bought me. What was that, like 3 seconds? But with all of the context, it goes a little bit deeper. So then what you're saying, when you're the interviewer and you hear somebody say, it was a cabin lot my dad bought me. And then you might say, ooh, how old were you? What did you do with the cabin lot? Whatever. Could be like just plenty of questions that could eventually get to that place. Or you could say, what makes that the best gift you ever received? And that gets me to go deeper into my heart. So yeah, the really good stuff.
That's excellent.
And I think it's interesting. We're like a half an hour in to our conversation today.
Mm-hmm.
And how many questions have I asked you? I think I asked you, number one, I think I asked, I asked you these 3 questions. That's for sure. I answered one of them. But other than that, I basically said, why did you start your podcast? Is it good to have a co-host? What happened to your old podcast? Who's your avatar?
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. How long is each episode? How many questions? So that's 6 questions in about a half an hour. So that gets us at our, that hits us almost perfectly to our 5 minutes per question.
Yes, indeed.
This is where I want to take the episode. I want to do a quick break for our sponsor. But when we get back, I want to find out from you some of the best advice that you would give to a new podcaster, some of the learning lessons that you've gotten along the way, and some of the tools that you use today through your podcast that you can't get away from. We'll be right back. Hey, my friend, as you know, this episode is sponsored by my company, GrowYourShow.com. We want you to be able to have the best tools at your disposal without costing you a whole arm and a leg. So right now you can get a free list of vetted equipment that like mics, mixers, webcams, sound treatment, editing software, everything that you need. I created the whole PDF with direct purchase links just to save you time and money, to help it be more convenient for you. So this free PDF will help you skip all the guesswork. If it's on there, it's vetted and approved by yours truly. And if it's not on there, it's probably not worth the money. So go ahead and get yours at growyourshow.com/PDF. Let's get back into the show. We're back with Agi Keramidas, and we've got a couple questions. First and foremost, Agi, what is, I'm going to take a break here.
Mm-hmm.
My mom went to the Utah State University, and they were the Aggies. Some people pronounced it Agi. Your name is spelled AGI, and they are AGGIE. But some people would say Agi. Anyway, she went to Utah State. I grew up in Utah, and she was an Aggie, not an Augie. Some people called her an Augie. All right.
Well, the only thing I can say about that, Adam, is that it is a Greek name converted into the English language. So it's not really an English name as such. It is my, version of my Greek name. So.
What? How do you pronounce it in Greek? Is it still?
In Greek, it would be Agi, but that letter gamma does not exist in the.
What does it mean? What does it mean in Greek? Like, how could you explain it? Does it mean strong and powerful?
Something like that. Yes, I would like that. It sounds good. So let's keep it to that. That's fine.
What is your best advice that you would have for a brand new spanking podcaster?
Oh my, this is very general now, Adam. The thing that comes to mind is work with someone if you can that can help you. Not necessarily, as one-to-one or with a coach, but have someone to support you, even if it's a co-host. Don't do it just yourself. Yeah. Again, it's such a broad question. It's impossible to get every single new podcaster. But that was what came to my mind.
There was an actor who he became very wealthy over some time. And people were calling him a self-made man. And his response was, no, I'm not a self-made man. I was lucky to have good people around me. I am created from all of them, and I could never have done this by myself. So I love that your best advice is to get help. Your best advice is to partner with people, a co-host or a company, some way that you can excel. Because if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Go together.
If you did it all over again, Agi, what would you do differently this time?
Probably get some help. Similar to what I said earlier. Maybe, get some more given or delegated rather than doing everything myself, which at the time I enjoyed, but I won't do it again. What
would you give off first? Or what have you given off quickly? promotion of the
I
episodes?
love the creation of the content. Even the editing, I like it. I'm geeky enough to do it myself. But the promotion is not, I struggle to do it myself.
All right. Get help. And for you, it was promotion. All right. I got my notes.
Mm-hmm.
Third question. What tools do you use in your podcast or through your podcast editing or onboarding, emails, calendars? What tools do you use that you would never get rid of? You're so glad you found these tools.
There is one that certainly is indispensable. I could never do without it. It's a transcription service. It's called Otter. So it's OTTER.ai. Otter. And that I have used for...
OTTR?
OTTER.
ER.
Otter, yes.
Dot
I know
AI.
yeah, that's the one, exactly that. So I put there all my podcasts. So it's fantastic to have a written record of it's much easier, to search for things and go back to previous episodes. And I also use it as a note taking. When I record, for example, a solo episode, often I would record my thoughts about it on there, and it transcribes it in pretty much real time. And then I have that as a framework on which I can base whatever I'm going to say. So yes, that is the most invaluable service I use. There are others, but this is the best.
What else do you use those transcriptions for? I know you search them. I know that it helps you kind of figure out things on your own. I guess what I'm curious on is, are you one of the people that posts the full transcription somewhere to help with SEO or something else like that?
I post the transcription on the website notes,
Okay.
so the extended show notes, shall we say. And the other thing that I really use it for, and it's invaluable, is because I do this called Consolidation Episodes. So I go back in my previous episodes and pick up topics, for example, goal setting or meditation or things like that. And I pick up 3, 4, 5 episodes that speak about that and collate them into one episode where I present it, very concisely. In 20 minutes, one can hear 5 experts on meditation, for example, and get it. So it would be impossible, I think, to do without a transcription, because I won't remember who said what, but it's very easy like this to search and classify.
Awesome. Well, with you and your 230 plus growing episodes, I hope that the listener goes and checks you out. It's Personal Development Mastery. And you'll just scroll down into our show notes today and you'll be able to find the link to that. You can go over. And feel free to listen to a couple of episodes and give Agi a honest written review. And if you do that, let him know that you heard about him here. And we will jump off. Agi, thank you for jumping in, giving us all of your tools, your tips, some strategies, some of your thought processes with who your avatar is on your podcast, who they are in your business, how you serve them, what you do to come up with the questions for your listener. And just some of those processes were really, really helpful. That big takeaway of having us get help. And I'll end today's episode by mentioning that our company, Grow Your Show, growyourshow.com. And we didn't plan this or anything like that. This is just Agi's answer and response. But I figured it might be helpful for me to let you know, the listener, that Grow Your Show does help with a lot of that promotion. So if you're somebody in the same position as Agi who wants to offload that promotion, one thing you can do is just go to growyourshow.com, schedule a call with me, and see if you and I could work together so we can get that piece off your plate. And finally, my team has another couple of transcription companies. If they can think of it and put it in the show notes, we'll add that as well so that there's a couple of options. So if you scroll down and you want a transcription service, you should be able to find one there. The first 6 episodes of our podcast, this is the podcast on podcasting, is a course. So if you're brand new, it would be helpful for you to go through that course. It's the kind of course where you don't have to give me your email. You don't have to get pixel dated. It's just right there as first 6 episodes of this podcast. Scroll back, check it out, and learn what you need to learn to be able to have a top podcast. And before we go, Mr. Agi, it's like Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi. When I said Mr. Agi, it made me think of this karate show that I listened to a long time ago. All right, perfect. We are not cutting that out. It's too fun. Agi, what are your final thoughts for our listener?
Adam, I will say it's also for you as the host that some of out of those conversations, the hundreds of conversations that I have made for my podcast, particularly I enjoy the ones that on the other end is also a podcaster. So there is some kind of, connection or rapport or vibration between these conversations. So this was no exception. I really enjoyed it very much. And I wanted to thank you for, allowing me to share what I did and also for this wonderful job that you do with helping people to start and grow a podcast, because it is, in this time that we live, it's very important to make a difference if you can. And if you're thinking about having a podcast, I think you should.
Awesome.
So thank you.
I love it. I appreciate it. Go and check out Agi and his podcast and his website, which are in the show notes. Scroll down and we'll see you on the next episode. By the way, one way to ensure that you don't miss out on great content that we're producing on a regular basis is to make sure you're subscribed to the show. You need to be subscribed or following the Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to it in order not to miss all of that. And before I let you go, I need to mention, because a lot of people are asking, do you help? Can you help me with this? And the answer is yes. My company actually does it. It's called Grow Your Show. And you can find that at growyourshow.com. Our clients, they call us the easy button for podcaster because they simply have to record their episode. And they know that every single thing else is done for them. We sweat the hard stuff so you can be the star of your show. And if you would like help to make sure that we're editing and publishing and promoting and doing your social media, it's all in one place. And I think it's pretty affordable. You'll have to take a look for yourself. Just go to growyourshow.com and check us out. And by the way, I'll see you on the next episode.